So welcome back. I saw a hoodie the other day. It was black, and across the chest in great big bold white letters was a warning. Stay away. I have compassion fatigue. It was a hoodie for sale, so I don't know where people would actually wear that. I'm imagining all kinds of places where that would be very funny to put in place, but maybe a little bit inappropriate. I've got a t-shirt that says, "You're offended by that, but I think it's funny. That's why I'm happier than you." Happy people, I've noticed, rarely suffer from compassion fatigue and burnout. They've figured something out that weary, negative, depressed people have not. They don't carry other people's emotions with them. Well, welcome back. This is part two of You're Doing It Wrong. It's all about compassion fatigue. If your work requires compassion so that you can be successful in your job, if it's a fundamental requirement in your job, and if you're getting tired of caring, I mean like really tired, if you're experiencing what has come to be called compassion fatigue, and if a few days off really isn't going to cure it for you, then this video is for you. In part one of this two-part series, I suggested that compassion that has the greatest impact and that can be expressed over a long haul, a long period of time, has little to do with our emotions, with our empathy, or even with the emotions of another person and what they're experiencing emotionally when they're in suffering or in pain or discomfort. Compassion is, at its core, not feelings, but it's action. To be compassionate is to take action. It's to help someone who is suffering by carrying something for them that they simply cannot carry, and that you are personally equipped to carry for them. When we experience compassion fatigue, especially if it grinds us up, it's likely that we are worrying about and empathizing with and carrying responsibility for things that are simply not ours to carry and that we are not equipped to carry. Doing so injures us and doesn't serve them. According to the work done by Christina Maslach, who's a UC Berkeley professor, someone who I've followed and appreciated for years, and I met a while ago, one of the primary researchers at UC Berkeley of job burnout, she's one of the first ones to really research where it came from and how it happened, especially as she focused her work on first responders and those in helping professions. She's a fascinating person, and her research suggests that burnout begins with compassion fatigue, and then it progresses through 3 stages. Does this describe you? Stage 1 she calls emotional exhaustion. We've been tired for a long time emotionally. We notice that the range of emotions that we have is narrowed and narrowed and narrowed. Most people can name a whole bunch of different emotions that they have. But because of emotional exhaustion, we get to a place where we can only name 1 or 2 emotions and everything else is just flatness in between. Usually those 2 emotions are, we are angry and tired. So if you ask somebody how you doing, and their answer is, or angry or tired, and you do that several times, they're probably in an emotionally exhausted state, according to Maslach. A smaller range of emotions eventually, over a period of time, results in what she came to call compassion fatigue, or she used a slightly different term. So stage 1, emotional exhaustion. We don't like that. We don't like that feeling of emotional exhaustion. No one likes it, so we try to do something to take care of that emotional exhaustion. That doing something is what she calls stage 2. To cope with that emotional exhaustion and compassion fatigue, that is a part of it, we just push people away from us. We turn them into flat objects instead of actual people. We depersonalize them. That's what she calls stage 2. And we're doing that because we think by doing it, it'll help us recover some of our compassion, or it'll help us get over that emotional exhaustion stage. It just actually doesn't, because those people we are around are now they're just objects, or they're flat things. They're not full of life. They're not people anymore. This is why you could hear people talking about the motor vehicle accident victim, or you could hear people talking in a hospital about the hip is here, or they don't use names, they don't use descriptions of a human being, they use descriptions of their condition. In firefighting, the EMTs often call a person for whom they've gotten emotionally exhausted or around whom they've gotten emotionally exhausted, a frequent flyer, somebody who they have to go serve a lot and a lot and a lot. Or they'll call them a single wide trailer or something like that. And it's said with a little bit of humor, but really it's a way to deal with emotional exhaustion, to flatten people out and go into stage 2, which is to depersonalize them. That's not Betty Johnson. That's a frequent flyer. I get it, and so does Maslach. We understand that, but it is a vain attempt to try to deal with the emotional exhaustion that precedes it. So we realize that doesn't happen for a while. It doesn't work to depersonalize people around us. So that what that does is tip us then into, according to Maslach, stage 3, which is a loss of purpose. It's really, if we've been in this for very long, we start saying, well, what's the point? I'm just going through the motions. It doesn't matter at all. And that is the most common thing that people who are in compassion fatigue say. I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. This is pointless. This is worthless. Well, how do you reverse that? Well, you reverse it in the reverse order that you got it. So let's go to stage 3 there. And what we want to do is to remind ourselves of what our purpose is. You've got to get away from it for a hot minute. Get away from it, zoom out, look at yourself, the whole trajectory of yourself, and remind yourself about why you are doing this. If you don't have a mission, define one. Define, why is this worth it? What is my purpose? What is my role? What am I doing here? I've done all these years of work to get to this place. What is my mission? What is my purpose? Why am I actually here? And get crystal clear about that. It might take a hot minute because you might not have the mental energy to even do that. But without doing that, you cannot reverse this. Why is a pursuit like the one I'm after? Why is this work, this mission, this aim, this goal, why is it even worth it? Answer that question. If you can't answer that question in a compelling way, you're going to be doomed to stay at stage 3. So then after you've got, okay, this is my purpose, this is my personal life mission, if you want to even call it that. This is what I'm doing here. I'm in my sweet spot when I'm doing this, right? Then it'll be important that you go to step 2, which is to re-engage with 1 or 2 people who fill you up. Because since you've been in this compassion fatigue state for a while, you've pushed everybody away and you don't really want to connect with anybody. So find 1 or 2 people who you can engage with that do not have anything to do with work, and they fill you up. These are optimistic people. They're courageous. They're creative. They're good for you. Decrease, or as a part of this step, decrease or cut out altogether the time around coworkers and friends and relatives who are pessimistic, whose whole approach to life and their explanatory style sounds like Eeyore. We're all gonna die, it's never gonna work. Distance yourself from those people. Not that they are not worthy of love, but if you cling to them or hang around them, they will bury you. Pessimism is highly contagious. So distance yourself from pessimistic people if you're trying to return from compassion fatigue and burnout. Focus while you're doing that on what you're grateful for. Start with very small things and be around people that you're grateful for deliberately. You don't have to have big, deep, meaningful conversations or climb big mountains with them. Just be around them. The third thing you do is to focus on what you're truly grateful for in specific. Even write it down, even say it out loud. No matter how small, take compassionate action with a couple of people in your life. Do things that are compassionate for them, that don't make you feel better, but they are good for them. Take small compassionate action as a part of that third step. Let me add 3 pro tips to you too. If you're wanting to come back from compassion fatigue, or if you see it's on the horizon, you want to avoid it, here's 3 pro tips for you. Tip number 1, get a life. Develop a life outside of your work that has nothing whatever to do with your work, that is itself engaging and enjoyable and a little bit difficult. Second pro tip, study yourself a little bit. Zoom out and get some perspective. There have been many times in your work when you have done the right thing for someone and you've done the compassionate action for someone over a long period of time, and you've not gotten swept up into their emotional weather system or the emotional weather system of the event and the people around them. You've still been able to be compassionate. So study yourself. During those times, you've been incredibly effective and the most compassionate during those times. And when all is said and done, you didn't get worn out. So study yourself. How did you do that? What was different? What did you do you'll learn a lot. If you can't recall any of those times, then look around and find somebody in your same vocation who has that approach to life and to work, and ask them how they do it. Here's the third pro tip. I call this getting clinical. This might be the easiest of all these 3 pro tips to do. What I mean by getting clinical is, it is as though when you are doing the compassion actions and you're around people in the emotional storms of their difficulty and their challenges and their struggles and their families and their friends and all that goes along with that, the hurricane of their trauma, for example. What I mean by getting clinical is it is as though you find a little switch internally that allows you to take compassionate action, to be truly present, to care, but not to carry their emotions. We're able to do the compassionate thing without letting our own emotions well up and cloud the situation. That's what I call getting clinical. Do you think that your kind and professional and attentive server at that high-end restaurant actually feels sorry when he steps in and fixes the mistake on your order? He said, "Oh, I'm really sorry about that. Let me fix that for you." He's not sorry. He's just fixing it. He's just working the problem. You don't want him to go home and feel sorry for you. You just want him to fix it and be polite about it, right? The dentist who didn't numb you up completely doesn't feel anguish when you tell her that you are in pain and ouch, that hurts. She says, "Oh, I'm sorry." She doesn't go home and pet the fur off of her worry and break out into tears and wake up in the middle of the night struggling because you were in pain. She just numbs you up some more and says, "I'm sorry." That's what I mean by getting clinical. You could probably think of lots of examples of that in your own vocation. So here's what we've learned. Every pro who does not experience compassion fatigue has figured out a way to genuinely care by their action, with their judgment, in the decisions that they make, in their behaviors, without turning on or turning way up the emotional distortion and the emotional empathy switch. And you can do that too. You can care a lot about somebody and what they're going through and what they're experiencing without letting the neurochemicals of fear cascade through your body as though you're the one under threat, as though you're the one in trauma. The person is going to go through the storm, and they're going through it, and they don't need you to feel what they feel. If you are a 911 call receiver, the person calling at that moment in their life that's really difficult for them doesn't need you to feel the fear that they are feeling, or the sadness, or the terror, or the confusion that they're feeling, in order for you to help them. In fact, if you do feel that, even in small amounts, you're not going to be able to help them. You'll experience the emotional distortion that they are experiencing, and then your judgment will be distorted. We don't want to experience emotional distortion when we're helping other people. It doesn't help them. It may actually hurt them. It will definitely hurt us. We want, and what we want in this situation, is to be able to step back, to take a breath, and to do the compassionate thing, to have good judgment without feeling what they're feeling. That is true and powerful compassion. So, in the moments that you find yourself swept away with similar feelings because you're being empathetic, take a pause, step back, and realize that to feel what they feel is not going to help them at all. It'll likely make it worse for them. So this is some powerful stuff. Compassion done right does not result in compassion fatigue, because compassion is action, not emotion. What I want and what I need from you, if I'm in a hard circumstance, is compassionate judgment, good decisions, good behavior. I don't want you to feel what I'm feeling. That's going to actually make it worse for me if you do. So as we wrap this up right here, remember this: if you feel too much of what others are feeling, you're not truly helping them, and you may end up hurting them, and then even yourself in the long run. Take compassionate actions. There you go. Compassion fatigue. Huh. So I've got some compassion for you if you are experiencing compassion fatigue. I truly do. But it's mostly because, with all due respect, bless your heart, you're doing it wrong. I'm just saying. Here's to you.